Hello and welcome to the Embodied Shakti Summit. I'm Sama Morningstar and I have Neelam here with me. Thank you so much, Neelam, for joining us. And I would love for you to introduce yourself and share about your work and your relationship with Embodied Shakti. What does Embodied Shakti mean to you?
Good morning, all the way from India, Sama, and thank you for having me. Uh, Embodied Shakti to me means Shakti means Prakriti in India. Prakriti means nature. And a woman has this nature inside her body. And that's how she doesn't have to do anything, she just has to tap in to access that is already within her body. To me, a woman's body is an embodiment of the entire nature, all the cycles of nature, and everything that the nature or the Prakriti represents. A woman carries it within her body, within her womb. And for me, embodied Shakti is just that.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And so do you work with Embodied Shakti personally or professionally, helping women to get back in touch with this intrinsic Prakriti?
Yes, I do offer workshops for women across India as of now,
Mm-hmm.
and have been leading the workshop called "The Empowered Woman Awakening to Her Goddess Field." That has begun. Yeah,
The,
so I do
the
work with
empowered, you call it the
women.
empowered woman awakening to her goddess field.
Yes, because I realized women do not know what the core essence of being a woman is, of uh, of what a goddess is, of what Prakriti or Shakti is. So a fundamental understanding of what I am at the core of my being. Of course, everybody is Shiva and Shakti. Every woman has feminine and masculine, but the basics, the root of that understanding and that essence is very twisted, is very diluted, is very misunderstood, is not understood at all. So, the empowered woman is to introduce women to that fundamental essence, and then we go forward from there. But first, if I do not understand what my core essence is, how am I going to embody it? How am I going to integrate it? So when I do not know who I am, what medicine I carry, what energy I embody, how am I going to work towards accessing it? So the Empowered Woman Workshop is a gateway which takes women to understanding their own selves better.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And so what kind of practices do you teach or help women to experience for themselves in these workshops?
The single most, although the Empowered Woman covers a lot of stuff, however, the core which comes out from when I listen to women, apart from abuse and healing that womb trauma, is many women struggle to receive. And if you look at Shiva and Shakti embodied the symbolism, Shiva is the giver and the Shakti is the receiver. And yet, and when the fundamental essence of a woman, of course, give and take is mutual. However, the core essence of woman is to receive. Most of the women in my workshops find this aspect within themselves blocked. And because of the cultural conditioning that a woman, in order to feel significant, has to do, has to give, that giving has become over giving because women somewhere don't feel important. And it's so much of cultural consciousness that women have unconsciously blocked their receiving, their ability to receive. And that's one of the fundamental key aspects which comes out in the group energy every time.
And so how do you help women to get back in touch with this ability, this intrinsic ability to receive?
So we go through various practices and first figure out what has caused this wounding or this block. And many will say different reasons, like because they ask and they don't get it, they feel guilty or inadequate or insufficient to ask. So the practice begins by embodying or understanding that it is a birthright to receive, because even the physical structure of a woman is to receive through the yoni. So understanding practices around that, working around asking and breaking those woundings, or understanding those woundings in the first place as to why and where this aspect has come from. And one of the things which also emerges is the block to ask receives because of feeling rejected. Because when they ask, they don't receive. Either the women are financially dependent on men, or the men want them to spend as they want, and they are not on the spiritual path. And so the women struggle. Uh, Even I have seen and it's so sad. I have seen financially independent women letting their husbands run their money for them, and for attending a spiritual workshop or spending on themselves, they have to ask, and they find it so difficult to ask. So we begin with fundamental practices around asking simple things from each other, and then later on digging to a deeper aspect of the wounding and the hurt, and healing around that aspect.
Wow, so you actually practice there in the workshop,
We do.
asking each other with other women in the workshop,
Yes.
can you pass the salt or whatever it is in
Yes.
the
Yes.
workshop?
And I gave personal examples because receiving has been one of my own major blocks also. Receiving support is been major, fundamental in my life, and I have worked many years in opening up my portals of receiving, particularly support from men. And I talk about how deep this wounding went in the women in my lineage. That men were never there for women, and how that, in spite of having a fantastic man in my life, how that wounding evolved and somehow became present in my own life, so that I could understand, and then I could pass on that experience to other women uh, about receiving. So I talk from my own personal experience that, when Paul is there, I will ask him, sweetheart, can you give me a glass of water? Even though I am fully capable to go and get that glass of water. And at that point in time, I do not feel like getting up. I literally give these examples. And women who have attended my workshops and then come to my and Paul workshops, wherein we are teaching other subjects like shamanism, and and the lights have to be switched off and we have to do a guided meditation. I said, I'm not getting up. Can you please do it for me? And
Ah,
women see that and they laugh. I said, remember, we talked about how important it is to ask and not feel guilty about it. It's not an incapability issue. It's not an issue wherein I should feel inadequate about asking. It's a mutual give and take. So I embody that in the workshop for other women, and they kind of laugh. And I'm sure a seed is planted that it is
yes.
their birthright to receive, and it is okay to ask. It's not shameful to ask, and that's how the whole drama or the theater revolves around personal enactment. And it's fun, and it's live, and it's joyful, and it's planting a seed, I'm sure.
Do you do a little bit of role play in there, like make made up scenarios with each other during those
Yes,
workshops?
yes, we do. We pair up women. So there are various exercises we pair up them with. Where did I lose my feminine principle? Because in the beginning of the workshop, we discuss what, and I ask them. It is not a theory. I ask them what, according to you, represents a feminine principle. Uh, so the issues come out, and then I pair them up. Okay, so what happened in your life wherein you gave away, and what can you do going back from here? What baby steps? Because some women are just overwhelmed because it's too much to understand and integrate. So I break it down. What baby steps can we take today and going from here uh, to implement these changes, to bring about the embodied Shakti into our life, to open up to receiving, to embodying the essence of a woman more and more. And receiving is one theme which evolves predominantly again and again and again. So yes, we do pair up exercises, and we do pair up women with each other to understand. Many women, move around conceptual. So I will go and do this. But what will you go and do to implement this? And so bringing it down to baby steps,
Mhm.
because when I take a baby step, say ask for a glass of water, or ask for opening a door, or ask for a bag which I'm carrying, or a grocery bag which I'm carrying to be held, and ask for that little help from anybody, from my support system, from my parents, from my siblings, from my friends, then the universe gets a signal that I'm open to receiving, and it sends people in my life who want to give, and it opens up my own receiving portals in my life. So we come down to the core, we come down to the baby steps.
Mhm. Beautiful. And I love that emphasis in your workshop about how are you going to implement this
Right.
in your life, and really allowing each person to reveal to themselves, and in this held space of the workshop with a partner in the workshop, oh, this is a pattern that blocks my receiving. These are some old feelings. And then the remedy then is in, oh, what's our plan of action of how to do it different?
Right.
How do you then go back into your life with your relationship with your husband, your family members, your community members, and take those baby steps and actually do something different? Because there's a whole workshop culture where people go and have these huge transformative experiences where they do dramatic breath work or body work that gets you into, or even plant medicine that gets you into an alternate state. So you have this experience of some kind of enlightened awareness, but then there's no real guidance about how do you then implement that. And my experience in those types of workshops is that I often have a huge crash afterwards, where I get back to my life and see that it's not producing that state for me in some way. And so it sounds like your workshops are very practical and experiential.
We also provide after workshop support. We have groups online, say WhatsApp groups with the women who have taken the workshop. So I put practices again and again from time to time, which they can go back and keep applying, keep practicing. I encourage to come out in the open. I encourage them to come out in the open and to share their day-to-day struggles or concerns or whatever issue they are facing, so that they have a support system available. They know that they have a platform wherein they can ask without judgment, without guilt, and we encourage it to be an ongoing process. So I really encourage sharing, because when I share, they learn, and when they share, everybody, including me, learns, and we never know how the words spoken by one can touch the lives of many. So women keep in touch. So it's like an online circle through these forums, through these groups, which continues on an ongoing basis, because these women are from different cities across the country, and they may be busy to meet in their own city, but this circle keeps them together, and makes them feel safe to be who they are, and they come back with issues and problems and aspects which they need more detailing on, and we go beyond the scope of uh, the di- the sidelines of the workshop to encourage them, and to keep all of us as a community, as a tribe together.
Wow. And so are you the main person who created this approach to these workshops, or have you been working with partners or collaborators, or how did you come up with
So,
this system?
we realized over a period of teaching that, as you rightly said, the high gets created in the workshop, but then people go back and don't practice. And then when they mix into their day-to-day life, they do not find it fully equipped to integrate these practices, and the ongoing support system is required. So, with all our workshops, we have this tendency that as soon as the workshop is done, we create a group, and all those members who want to agree to be a part of that group are on that group, and we continue sharing, we continue practicing. We will launch exercises and encourage participation. We will pair them up online, wherein they can connect at the back end online, then come back and share their questions. And so then we started, because we thought that this ongoing support system was missing for our participants, and in order to integrate, that was needed. So then we started these groups, and then it became a practice for all our workshops.
So you're saying our workshops. I'm wondering who is we and how you got started doing these workshops to begin with.
The Empowered Woman is being led by me alone right now. The other workshops are with my twin flame Paul, who was from California, I met online on Spiritual Singles, and we got together. We realized we were twin flames, and we met. He came to India. He lives with me in India, and we teach other workshops related to shamanism, ancestral healing, uh, shadow work, inner child work, and so on and so forth, about dreams. So that's why I use the word our, because the other workshops he's a part of.
I see, I
And
see. I see. And so now this opens up a whole other topic. You said you realized you were twin flames.
yes.
How did you know that?
Well, initially when we met, we did not know, but as time progressed, we realized that there was a lot of mirroring in our life about issues and stuff like that. Then we did a journey on it uh, to unfold the nature of our relationship, and that's how it became apparent over a period of time that we are a twin flame relationship. We the core issue would in our both of our lives would remain the same. However, the embodiment of that issue in physical life, in physical reality, may be from a different area. For example, uh, for one, the core issue self-worth being reflected in finances, and in core issue being self-worth reflected in, say, the area of love. So the reflection of the core issue was different, but in aspects of life was different, but the core remained the same. And this evolved in many of the life incidences, and then we journeyed on it and to realize that we were a twin flame. And as we went along in our journey, somebody out of the blue would come and just say it without our asking it, you are a twin flame couple. And it
Hmm.
kind of got stamped more and more, uh, and it's been like that since then. In January 21st, we completed 7 years of our meeting. It's like one big
Wow.
cycle.
Wow, what a story. And so you heard it here, people. This website that you've met your twin flame on, what was it called again?
Spiritualsingles.com.
Spiritualsingles.com. Amazing. What a story. And but your description of the twin flame relationship is quite unique and very grounded.
Hmm.
um, I've heard a lot of discussion about twin flame relationships that kind of makes me not want to have anything to do with it.
Well,
But
it is, and I'm glad we're on this talk and this topic came out because my twin flame journey got me onto my journey of the embodied feminine,
uh-huh.
because it is a perfect yin and yang journey, and it mirrors the, I will not use the heavy word. It mirrors situations and aspects which you need to integrate within yourself. It's a clear mirror, and that's what got me started onto my journey with the feminine. We got married in India. I went to the US in California, and I'm like, two different cultures. What am I doing here? I did not feel at home. I did not feel at peace. So I questioned, and one of the guidance which came was me. So there are male shamans, and so along with the male, there is a female shaman, and the women are equally important in leading a circle and a community. And the guidance and the vision which came was me leading a circle of women around fire, drumming, leading them into themselves. And although it was a vision, I sat with that vision. It did not ring true at that point in time several years ago. But as I went into over my life with Paul, there were reasons we had to leave US and come to India and live in India. And then I started inviting women in my space who had a lot of different kind of abuse. Some had emotional abuse, some had sexual abuse. My own life has had abuse, and I started questioning. I started sitting in my own medicine wheel circle, and I started facing the north, the direction of our ancestors, the direction of wisdom, as to why is so much abuse alive in my space. And I got two very important guidance. One, because I'm abusing my own self, which was like a boomerang. And two, that I needed to lead women. Again, this guidance came because I had to live through it in order to and experience it in order to share it forward. So it was very embodied in my own space as well. It was not coming from theory. It was not coming from, okay, womb healing is important, so I need to teach it. But it was so alive in my own space. Then I had to go through it step by step, the emotional wounding, the ancestral clearing of the trauma in the lineage, and my own abuse in my life, which had been prevalent since childhood. And to understand why I have chosen those experiences, and why it is important to break the chains of patriarchy and to share it forward. And so I questioned deeper, what kind of help can I bring to women? What kind of support can I be to women? And that's how this whole aspect in my life evolved. And I understood why it is important to be true to yourself. And that's wherein my truth in the relationship, my individuality in the relationship evolved, because we were all the work that we were doing was together. And that's how the core work which my soul wanted me to birth kind of emerged from those experiences together with the yin and the yang. The inner yin and the yang came alive, and it's still a process, because the Shiva and the Shakti, as you rightly said, it became my own inner Shiva and Shakti, and the projection in the outer universe with him. And so the ground was fertile in my own life. And that's why wherein I share in the workshop, the experiences come from my own experience. They are not theoretical, they are experiential, which I have gone through. So it is very easy for me to relate to them, and then it is easy for them to relate to me.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And so it sounds like this twin flame experience has quite an alchemy. There's quite a cauldron for you if you really engage with it in that way of transformation and empowerment of each member of the twin flame, like that. And I've heard so many stories of twin flame relationships being quite disempowering, especially for women, because, or at least what they think is a twin flame relationship, and that it just seems to perpetuate cycles of abuse, unfortunately. So it seems like both of you must have had a very supportive foundation already before coming together, where that intensity of a twin flame reunion could actually produce very healthy, empowered growth for both of you in a forward movement. Can you speak to that a little bit? What do you
So the good part about both of us, the positive, so to say, we both knew it is a twin flame. We both agreed it is a twin flame. And the foundation for us, apart from love, which is there in every relationship, was our spiritual grounding, was our shamanic path. And any disturbance which happened and which still happened, it is the spiritual rooting in ourselves which comes us back, and taking responsibility uh, for that disturbance, as to what role have I played in this, and what is my twin flame mirroring back to me, and owning that, and work and taking full responsibility of that if this is happening in my space, maybe it's just a projection, maybe it's a projection of the wounding in him, but it's also a projection of the wounding in me which he is mirroring, and vice versa, and taking conscious steps when the shadow self is triggered. We forget that. However, allowing that shadow self to be at ease as the trigger subsides, and to realize and to go back to our higher self, and to access that spiritual grounding, and to sit back and reflect, okay, so what is this drama trying to teach me? What wounding of my own is being surfacing in this moment, which I need to take a step into addressing, into feeling completely, and into healing. The single biggest thing which came up for me, and the wounding which emerged by relating with him, was of self-recognition and self-acceptance, because as we did workshops together, I felt wounded in my own uh, recognition from around people. I felt that I'm being shadowed and I'm not being recognized for who I am, and my contribution is not being seen. And I felt very wounded at that point in time. And as I worked with my animal allies, and I asked, Tiger is one of my primary allies, and I asked, why am I not being recognized for my contribution? Why am I seen inferior or as a shadow to him? And the single most guidance came that your journey is not about recognition from others. Your journey is to accept who you are, and embody who you are, and recognize who you are in your own self. And then the projection will change. And my single most journey since the last few years was working on that. Apart from working on the ancestral lineage wounding, was to
Mhm.
work on recognizing and accepting my own self. And that's how this women oriented workshops evolved, because I see that many women struggle in that area as well, about recognition and self acceptance. So that
Mhm.
is one another integral part of which became an integral part of the Empowered Women workshop.
Beautiful. So I'm curious about the lineages of shamanic work that you work with. I hear you talking about the medicine wheel, the directions,
Yes. Right.
ancestral lineage. I'm wondering what shamanic studies, lineages you've worked with and that you use in your practices.
So our work started together by teaching shamanism, the Native American shamanism, so to say. And from there, I realized that whatever the universe was pulling me has been a branch of shamanic work. So when we went into the ancestral healing, that is also part of the shamanic work, because the shamans work with ancestors, work with their lineages, and so on. And then when we embarked on a journey of dream work, I realized that the indigenous shamanic societies also use dream work in an indigenous way. So when we teach dream work, or when I teach dream work, it is not as per the Freudian or the Jungian philosophies. It goes back to the indigenous teachings as to how they applied dream work and how they worked, how the indigenous societies worked with the dreams and the unconscious. And that's how the progression of my womb work, or the empowered women work, also progressed, because I realized it is the same core. It is the same core. We talk about the directions and the seasons in shamanism and the cycles in shamanism. I realized that a woman's body is also so cyclical. So the medicine wheel that we talk in shamanism as being outside, the directions, the seasons, the cycles, the circles, all of that is in a woman's body. And that was a huge wisdom and realization in my space. And that is why the idea which is so alive in my space is to help women understand that that the nature and the connection that we talk about outside is inside a human's body. The menstruation cycle is a medicine wheel in action, is the seasons in action, and the woman's body goes through that. So we live it in our body. And what better power can a woman seek, or can a woman have, than realizing that and she carries the entire cycle or the entire nature in her own body. and
Mhm.
and to realize that and to work with that, it's the greatest alignment and integration of being as a woman.
Mhm. So I'm curious, with the ancestral work that you've been doing, have you traced back in your ancestry to discover or learn about indigenous practices that might have been alive in your ancestry at some point, or do you incorporate some of those as well?
And what we teach in shamanism is that all our ancestors have followed this path. And when we embark on our spiritual journey, be it shamanism or womb healing, it is not something new. We are going back to something which we already know. It is so deeply ingrained in our DNA. So what we are doing is just remembering. We are remembering it back. And when we remember it back, we are reclaiming it. And when we are reclaiming it, we are owning it fully. And that's the process which goes on in each teaching, that we are coming back to what we already know. So I do not know about my biological lineage, but I have been told, and I have realized through my dream work and stuff like that, about my spiritual lineage, and about lives in many Native American cultures, and in various indigenous cultures, of having a life of thought. And I've seen glimpses of those in my dreams, and in many readings it has come through. So yes, I have a very strong connection to being a desert woman, and that is why Sedona is so dear to me. And every year when we visit US, we definitely go to Sedona. We take a retreat to Sedona. So Sedona is very, very alive in my space.
Interesting. And it feels like that these indigenous shamanic practices, whether we are connected with them through our bloodline or through past life spiritual soul lineage, where we have memories and connections of other lifetimes that we're connected to in that way. It feels like the lineages that still have indigenous culture that's somewhat intact despite the attempts to annihilate them.
Yes. There is also a lot of annihilation of indigenous cultures across the world, in India including, because when colonization happened, it destroyed the indigenous aspects of even India. And when we teach shamanism, that's wherein I bring in the indigenous perspective of India as to how these practices are parallel. And I have done a lot of research to realize that the indigenous practices of the Native Americans, or for that matter, any shamanic culture, even Peruvian shamanism, is very, very alive in Indian practices. It's a different matter that people do not understand it as a shamanic way of being, because it's a part of the culture and it's a part of religion. But I quote examples, because through my own understanding and diving deep within and research, that they are very Hinduism and shamanism as taught in Native American cultures or any other culture is very, very parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very parallel, and it is very, very similar. There are so many similarities that I can bring through. And so if we look at every indigenous culture, I have found that, for example, the Peruvians work with the sun energy, and in the Andes, and sun has been a god in India throughout its lifetime, throughout its existence. We worship the sun. We have practices around the sun. We have mantras around the sun. So we work with fire energy all the time. Even when we do our havans, which is the ceremony around fire, just as we invoke the directions in shamanic practice, we invoke the 10 directions. The cultural thumbprint may be different, but the core essence of each indigenous culture is very, very similar. And to my surprise, I just realized there were institutions who were doing research, uh, formal form of research between Native American culture and Indian indigenous culture. And
Interesting.
I just smiled within that. This has what has been so throbbing in my space, and that's how I bring the connect to the Indian students as well, as to by drawing the parallel between the Hinduism. And see, you're not learning something alien, you're learning something which you already know, which is already a part of your culture. And that's how we draw the parallel, and that's how we teach. And it's so fantastic to realize that indigenous cultures across the world have the same essence, and indigenous cultures through patriarchy have been diluted or destroyed across the world. And that's the gift of patriarchy as well. And by bringing back the indigenous cultures, we are also embodying the Shakti, we are also embodying the feminine principle. And that's the connect I find in everything that I teach. And that is what is making me so passionate even right now.
Yes, I feel it. And that connectivity is something so beautiful to return to, because there is so much pain in the realization that, oh my goodness, these beautiful, connecting, embodied, potent indigenous practices all over the world have been so decimated by humanity. How did we do that? That's what that look on my face was when I said those words. And how could we have possibly gotten into that state of dis-ease that we would that so many people would be trying to destroy this precious treasure across the world, and the European lineages too of indigenous European spirituality. When you start to remember that's in my lineage as well, and you see that was just as violently, if not more violently, suppressed. Well, you can't say more. It's just as violently, okay? That for thousands of years, wise women who were practicing these indigenous European cultures were annihilated brutally. And in order to create this culture that would then spread out and go annihilate everyone else that resembled that in the world. And so this remembering and, you know, reaching back through our ancestry and reaching out to each other in different indigenous cultures that still maintain something intact, and traveling around the world to experience where the indigenous cultures are still intact feels like an important reweaving,
Yes.
and support. And it's interesting that, you know, there's a lot of controversy over the fact that Christopher Columbus thought that he was going to India and called the indigenous people there Indians. And there are a lot of people that still call Native Americans Indians. In fact, I just went to a local landmark recently that's called Indian Rock, and I live in a place that's sacred ground for Native Americans, and that rock was considered a sacred site, but it's called Indian Rock, right? And so there's, even in that language, even in that misconception, that was part of the whole genocide of the Native Americans. And misidentification and misunderstanding and not recognizing the beauty of these humans and cultural exchange that could have been happening. Even in that, there's this connectivity of, oh, there is that similarity that just sort of came through anyway between the Indian culture from India and the Native American cultures. And there's even theories about how the original Native American people came to Turtle Island or the United States across the Bering Straits and coming from Asia and over, and that's sort of a theory about the connectivity and the similarities between all of our indigenous roots,
Right.
which are very connected. Spiritual connection to nature and the elements is across the board in everything, and a connection to our bodies, our wombs, our ability to create new life, and that is central to our spiritual roots. I mean, here we have, as women, this power to bring a spirit into physical form, this portal that it involves all of the elements of nature and all of the cycles and seasons of nature, right? Get here we are as women with this capacity, and of course men have their role in it as well. And that's such a powerful thing, to reconnect with the nature of it in a way that allows and nourishes and honors and celebrates that, instead of, you know, what the disease of the patriarchy is doing, which is to try to dominate, control, suppress, or harm it in any way. And so it seems like this, getting back to what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation about this receiving, right? We can take it even farther to receive the beauty of our own nature.
True, absolutely.
Which, that's what's coming to me. Receive the beauty of our own wombs and the power of our own wombs into our lives, and allow that to radiate out.
And when you talked about the cellular memory of because of the annihilation, that also comes alive in many women, because they've been wanting to embark on this healing journey as a healer. They are on their healing journey on their own, but they want to bring this gift to others, and something just plagues them. Something just paralyzes them. I find many women, many of us, sitting on the threshold and not able to take that leap of faith, because I feel in many cases I've seen and experienced, it is this cellular memory coming from the past lifetimes of having prosecuted or having annihilated or having lived in those cultures wherein this aspect of them was suppressed or tortured. And it is very important today to go back to that lineages, to go back to that cellular memory and DNA, and address that and clear that and heal that, and first allow yourself to acknowledge that yes, this has been so, and to move beyond that fear in order to be able to receive this beautiful gift which is already there with us, and which is already being given to us. And that's what happened when I first started teaching the empowered women workshops. Even before I started teaching, the word culmination would go on in my inner space. So my life is a culmination. My life is a culmination. Culmination of what, I would wonder? Of all my life lessons, of all my soul gifts. What is my life a culmination of? And then when I first taught the empowered woman a few years ago, I found myself saying things which were not even a part of the content. And that's wherein it came that all that I have been teaching so far, and all that I'm coming, standing here teaching empowered women, helping women to own and reintegrate and embrace their own wisdom, is a culmination of all the wisdom. So that work is really the culmination of all the other work that I had done. And that is the work, because it talks about everything. It talks about all aspects of nature, ancestral lineage, healing the women in the lineage, the emotional aspects of the healing, the embodiment and the owning of the body and the owning of the self, the true nature, the work that we do as women, and helping women to embody that is the culmination of all the work that we have known. And that's wherein the word culmination made sense in my universe, in my space.
Yeah.
And as if universe was preparing me to culminate to what I now am so passionate about, the work regarding the women.
The culmination. I sure feel that for myself. The question that's coming up for me, because you talked about how that ancestral cellular trauma that we might be carrying might get in the way, or has, you've seen it, witnessed it getting in the way of particularly women wanting to step into their role as healers in this effect that things culminate in our lives into
Right.
where we're blossoming. And there can be a moment in that culmination of, oh, here's this old wounding back in
Right.
my lineage that I need to address. And one of the ways that I see this wounding coming up, for example, especially around this realization that all of our indigenous spirituality, it has a common root, right? And that we are sharing, there are many indigenous practitioners who are having, receiving the call to share their practices with people of all nations, right? There's a lot of that in the Native American communities of medicine men and medicine women saying our calling from spirit is to share this wisdom with all nations, to reweave this network of people who are all connected to the source of life, to the womb of Gaia, womb of Mother Earth, to spirit, through the elements, through the medicine wheel. And then there are those who are who were possibly raised as Native Americans or as some other indigenous person that is still suffering from the oppression, the genocide, the annihilation, that still has that trauma, that will often accuse someone like myself. I didn't grow up on the reservation. I do have Native American blood lineage. Or someone like yourself, you have all this indigenous lineage from India, but you don't necessarily have the blood lineage, but you do have the spirit lineage, right? But those people who are still really suffering from that wounding of growing up Native American might say, you're stealing my culture. And I wonder if you have any words to share about that, and how we can soothe that wound or attend to that.
I oftentimes think about that, and I have come across both aspects of this. People who have been critical to the indigenous people, and the indigenous people who have been receptive, and they see the medicine. It's what I have felt through traveling in US and elsewhere is the fundamental wounding is of being seen in every human, is of being acknowledged. We went to the flea market in Sedona last year, and there was one Native American woman offering her jewelry and stuff like that. we got into a conversation with her, and I inadvertently uh, shared words of blessing that may your stall have more people, and your jewelry reach the hearts of those who need it, and may you be seen. And she had tears in her eyes, and that even encouraged or propelled me to ask her to come out for a while. And as she came out, I just went and hugged her, and I whispered in her ears, "I see you, I honor you, I acknowledge you." And she said, "You see me, huh?" I said, "Yes, I see you." And then she went back, and other people started coming to her stall, and she got busy, and we quietly moved away. But this experience has stayed alive with me, and as long as we are embodying our true being, and that was what I was doing in that moment. I was just being me, and as long as we acknowledge and see other human, and that's the fundamental wounding. It was the fundamental wounding which I experienced in my twin flame relationship, about being seen and acknowledged. And I think at the heart of it, every human has this core need of being seen and being acknowledged. So as long as we can bring that essence out to the world, I think we are bridging the gap between what should be, and the wounding is settling a little bit in the field. Is what is alive in my space right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And healing is a messy business
It
sometimes,
is.
right?
It
We
is.
don't know what we're doing most of the
It
time,
is.
especially
And
with.
it is a spiral. It you feel you've lived through it, and then the another layer opens up, and another layer opens up, and it feels an ongoing process at times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Especially where we're at as a collective, as a species, where, um, we're at, it feels like we're really at a turning point or a crux or a culmination of dis-ease that really needs calling our attention to it, right? That's really calling this passion out of all of us that have
And the
discovered.
energies are really ripe. The energies are
Yes.
ripe for this kind of churning, this kind of turmoil, to bring something good out of the churning, to help us churn within, and the collective is churning with us. Many times I've been told some of the problems in my physical body I cannot relate to and I cannot understand. And sometimes we have to seek mutual help. And I've been told that the collective, you are processing the collective grief and the collective trauma of your spiritual ancestors, and it's a huge responsibility.
Mhm.
It's a huge responsibility to help not only yourself but to help our lineages to evolve and to grow and to make a contribution to that and to be a way shower. Yes, it's a big responsibility.
Mhm. Well, luckily we get that big dose of passion when we start to embody that Shakti that sustains and nourishes us
Yes,
through
absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
And
We are all supported, no matter what we think. We are all supported in our endeavors together, individually, through the collective web, through the higher forces. We are all definitely very supported.
beautiful. And that's a wonderful note to wrap up our interview on today. I would love to have you share about if you have a free gift for us for the summit participants.
The gift is evolving, and we'll share that over a period of time and shortly. So it's in the mystery box right now, and the
Mystery
mystery
box. I love it. A mystery box gift. So if you are curious and intrigued about Neelam's mixed mystery box gift, this is a true goddess gift, because you
you know
never
the,
know.
the the feminine is about the unconscious, the unknown. So be with the unknown, play with the field, and stay with the mystery. You never know what comes your way.
You never know. So if you want to play with that field of mystery with Neelam, you can go ahead and sign up for her mailing list. And as the mystery reveals itself, she will reveal it to you. So you can do that through the link just above this video. So thank you so much, Neelam. And I just want to hold us in a prayer. that may we all reconnect with our essence.
Yes.
Every time we might forget or feel disconnected, that we remember our essence and that we are supported to rediscover and remember that essence and how it connects us across the whole world, across cultures, that we all are sharing this same essence, and that we may allow that, our practice with that, our embodied Shakti practices, no matter what they look like, what cultures they come from, that we allow that to connect us once again as one being, as one living being of humanity. So that's my prayer for us. Is there anything you'd like to add to the prayer?
Yeah, and before we end, I want to say to all of you, and to you, and to all of us here, I see you,
Oh,
I honor you,
mm,
I acknowledge you.
mm.
Aho.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Boy, that feels
Thank you.
nice.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank you
nourishing.
so much. Thank you
All
so much.
right. Thank you. All right. So that's all for now, folks. Until next time.